Hi, my name is Martin Purnell, and welcome to Off-Grid Christianity, a weekly podcast for those who go or don't go to church and where we can meet and hear from those that have made their faith count. This podcast series is to encourage via conversation. You can contact us as well by email, ogc@accessradio.biz, and biz is spelled B-I-Z. So today's guest, who is she? Well, she's a scriptwriter and has a passion for making resources and training workshops for all. She writes sketches and monologues, and recently has had her latest book published through Instant Apostle called Following the Sun. Our guest is also a consultant for the Clua Initiative. But what is the Clua Initiative? Why has she written resources on subjects like mental health issues and modern slavery? Why has our guest got a passion for monologues? And what is her latest book, Following the Sun, all about? It gives me great pleasure to welcome to Off-Grid Christianity today's guest, Jackie Mouradian. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today. But for those that know nothing about you, first of all, where are we speaking to you from?
I'm in Wokingham, Martin, which is near Reading, Royal Berkshire.
Yes.
And I'm sitting in the loft because that's where the computer is, which is probably the hottest room in the house. So, yeah, I've got lots of water. Good to be here.
And of course, the great thing about your loft, because I have a video camera here so I can see what's going on in your loft.
Yes.
You've got a Christmas tree still up. Fair play. Well done.
Just can't be bothered to put it away, but there we are.
So let's go for it then. Fingers on the buzzers, no conferring. Question number 1. If you could invite anybody from history, Jackie, for an evening meal, alive or dead, so that you could ask them questions, who would it be?
Well, this particular person is still alive, actually. Well, it's Michael Palin.
Oh, very good.
Michael Palin. I would love to have a chat with him. Because if you just look at his life, if there's anybody's life I envy, it's that guy.
Because?
He started as a writer. He's a writer and he wrote for a lot of comedians, but then he became part of Monty Python, of course. I mean, what a joy that must have been to have been part of that and to have made all those incredibly funny sketches. And they must have had an absolute ball. So it would be lovely just to talk about that and how that was and what his favourite sketch was and all that. But then, of course, when he'd stopped doing that, he travelled the world. He got paid for travelling the world and meeting incredible people and writing about it. Yeah, so what an adventure.
Yes.
He's been on. And what a lovely guy as well. He's such a lovely guy and obviously very funny as well. So I think if you were going to have someone for dinner, that would be amazing.
He comes across like that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
As a really nice guy. And Channel 5, and I don't know if you can see it around the rest of the world, but Channel 5 have been showing over the past few years, because he's in his 80s now.
Yeah.
Some more of his travelogues, I think we can call them safely that.
Yeah.
The 3-part series where he went to Korea, North Korea, was brilliant.
Yeah.
I'd like to get you to ask him about what it was like off-set. And is he still in touch with one of the girls that showed him around, because they seem to have a genuine good relationship. But also, he went to Nigeria.
Right.
And the Nigeria one is brilliant. And the very last episode, half of it is set in a church, a massive, big church.
Yeah.
And you got the impression you got really moved by it. When you see Michael, or Mike, if you're allowed to call him that,
yes,
ask him what you thought of it.
Yes.
Please.
It's not likely to happen, Martin, but it would be lovely.
We never know. He might be listening to this saying, oh, yeah, I'll contact Jackie. She just lives up the street sort of thing. I'll go around and see her.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to ask him about Life of Brian.
Life of Brian. Classic. Absolutely brilliant.
It is. I have to doff my cap to him because obviously when it came out originally,
yes,
there was so much brouhaha going about it, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And how dare they do this? And most people that are complaining might be churchgoers at best. But they went on, I think was it Russell Harty on a Friday night on London Weekend TV? And there was a bishop there in all his regalia.
Yes, I kind of remember it.
Both he and I think it was John Cleese were on there. And they soaked up all this vitriol coming from the bishop and how bad it was.
Yeah.
He's of good stock, is Michael.
I think he's a good man.
The trouble is you've got to cook him a meal, though. So what are you going to cook him?
I'm not great at cooking. Okay, mince-based dishes is something I do pretty well. So it's likely to be a spag bowl or a chili or a lasagna, cottage pie, something like that. I do a very good spag bowl.
I can just hear him now phoning up saying, I want a number, I want to come round. And do you put wine in your spag bowl?
Always.
If there's any left.
We'll come on to that later, I think. But yeah.
Oh, I look forward to that then. Question 2. Who is your favourite biblical character or favourite biblical story or favourite parable, please, Jackie?
It's Peter. It has to be. He's the kind of the star of my book, apart from Jesus, of course, following the Son. But I just love I find his relationship with Jesus so encouraging. Peter was always messing up, wasn't he? He engaged his mouth before his brain, and he made mistakes. But Jesus never lost faith in him, and he called him the rock on which he would build his church, and that happened, even after everything, even after the denial. And he so lovingly restored him with that breakfast on the beach, and then Peter went on to do great things. But I just find his relationship with Jesus so encouraging for all of us, because he messes up such a lot. He was always trying to get to Jesus. I love that about him. He was jumping out of the boat because he wanted to walk on water. And then with that breakfast on the beach as well, Jesus is cooking on the beach and John's in the boat and he says it's the Lord, and Peter's jumping out. He's the one who jumps out of the boat. And when the women tell them that he's gone, his body's gone, John and Peter run to the tomb, but it's Peter who runs inside. He was just always trying to get to Jesus, and I love that about him.
Impetuous.
He was impetuous, he was impulsive, but he adored Jesus, and and obviously it was mutual. Yeah, he's just so encouraging, I think, for all of us. So yeah.
And yes, a good plug for your book as well. Well done.
Oh yeah. Let's try a few more of those. Yeah.
See how many we can count. Well, you remember you put a plug in this one. Question 3. If you were Prime Minister for the day, Jackie, and could change any law or impose a new law, what would it be?
If I was Prime Minister for the day, the first thing I'd do would be to phone Donald Trump and tell him what I thought of him. I think that would be one thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'd be very grateful for the positivity of your phone call.
Yeah. And I think, oh gosh, the mobile phone thing is the social media. I know that's in the pipeline anyway, but
yeah,
I know there are benefits to social media, but I think it is so addictive by nature. What it's doing to young people at the moment, I think, is awful.
I know.
Just the anxiety, the harmful content, the grooming that's going on online, it's dreadful. So I think, I'd want to get rid of social media on mobile phones. I think we're losing the ability to listen to each other as well. It's so much easier to message someone than pick up a phone and talk to them, let alone actually going and seeing somebody face to face. And I think we're losing that skill, the ability to listen to people, which is so important.
Yes. But are we allowed to keep WhatsApp?
Yeah, now that's a really good point, because WhatsApp's good, isn't it? And it is a way that groups of people can sort things out with each other. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think we can keep WhatsApp. We'll keep WhatsApp, but the rest of it,
everything else has to go.
I would say so.
And good luck with the phone call with Donald. Give him my regards, please. Because I do want to have a game of golf with him on one of his golf courses, but that's another story altogether. Question 4, outside of family events, what has been your most enjoyable day out, please? 2012
was a fantastic year for me. Well, for all of us. City won the league.
You better tell which city, because everyone thinks it's Bristol City, you see.
Nobody except you, Martin, is thinking of Bristol City. Okay. So Manchester City is my club, which I love dearly. They won the Premier League for the first time, sort of in 44 years, with that Aguero goal in the last minute, which was just... Okay, that was one thing. But also, my youngest son also got baptized that year. But the day I want to talk to you about is during the Olympics, the 2012, the London Olympics, which was just magnificent. My eldest son and his girlfriend and I decided we were going to go to Hyde Park on what turned out to be Super Saturday, when Britain won all those gold medals. Obviously, we didn't know that was going to happen at the time. And we thought we'd just go to see the triathlon, which started at 9:00 in the morning. So in Hyde Park, that was the idea, because we hadn't got tickets or anything like that. But of course, all the screens were up in Hyde Park. So we watched the triathlon, and then we thought, well, let's hang around a bit. And gradually more and more people were coming. And then on the screens, I realized that we were starting to win stuff. During the day, I think we won 2 rowing gold medals and a cycling gold medal. And everyone was getting really excited about this. And then more and more people were coming. And we thought, the athletics is going to start soon. Let's hang around for that. It was the most amazing evenings because it started with Jessica Ennis-Hill winning the heptathlon and Greg Rutherford at roughly the same time, which came out of the blue. Nobody expected that to happen.
No.
And then, of course, later on, at the finale was Mo Farah won the 10,000 meters, which was just magnificent. And it was really special because it's something I haven't told you, Martin. I love football, as you know, passionate about that.
Yes.
But also when I was young, I was a passionate runner as well. I was an athlete. I went to Loughborough University and ran for them. And my eldest son inherited that passion for running as well. So it was so special to be there that Super Saturday with Alex, who, when Mo Farah ran through and won that 10,000 meters, I just remember it, Alex, my son, he just turned around and picked me up and sort of swung me around.
Oh, wonderful.
It was gorgeous. The whole atmosphere of Hyde Park. London was such a good place to be during the Olympics. It was fabulous.
What did you study at Loughborough University, by the way?
I actually went to Loughborough because I wanted to run, and I did PE and sports science.
And your final question of the 5, and that is, what has been your most embarrassing moment to date, please, Jackie?
Yeah, I think it has to be the time I passed out in a friend's toilet at a prayer meeting because I'd had too much to drink.
Well, I like that kind of prayer meeting. Are we talking about too much drink water-wise or slightly stronger than water?
No, it was slightly stronger than water. No, it was a lovely thing, right? In my road, there was 3 households, families that were very close friendships, and we used to get together regularly. We went to the same church, and we used to eat together as families.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after that, the adults would get together to pray together, and it was really good, actually. Our host that day was very liberal with the wine. I'm going to blame him.
Yes.
It obviously had nothing to do with me.
No, you were force-fed it.
But he was very good at filling up your glass when you didn't realise what was going on. So we'd had the meal and we were drinking, and then we sort of carried on drinking, when we were sitting around and praying. I just thought, I need the loo, I think. I didn't feel unwell at that point, but I went to the loo, and the next thing I remember is Steph, my friend and the other host, crouching over me saying, "Are you okay?" And I'd completely passed out in the loo. That was very embarrassing.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure you're the only person to have ever done that.
I think probably the only person to do that at a prayer meeting.
Yes.
I think other people have done that, Martin, to be fair. Not at a prayer meeting, I think.
But I know how many people have fallen asleep in a prayer meeting. And woe betide anyone that casts a stone towards you for doing that.
Well, let's see.
That's brilliant. Well done you for sharing that. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. I can see this podcast is going to be great. So let's go for it.
Sure.
If you had to describe yourself, how would you describe yourself? Work-wise, first of all.
I've got to that kind of pension age. Yes. So at the moment, I've had a lovely time with, which I'm sure we'll come on to, working with Mosaic Creative, with my good friend Bill Crooks. Which we did for 17, 18 years. And that was community development work. We were working with a lot of churches and aid agencies, providing training and resources to help churches engage with their communities. That was, I guess, the main thing we did. And you mentioned in your intro that the Kluwer Initiative, who address modern slavery, and we work with them as well, producing resources to raise awareness of modern slavery in this country and county lines and stuff. But that Mosaic as a double act, I guess, finished in 2021. And since then, I have been concentrating on writing the book, but also then I started to work in my local church. So I'm working as a part-time as an office manager in my local church, which is working in Baptist Church, which I love. It's a vibrant, thriving church and growing all the time, which is great. I'm enjoying that. And then just doing little bits and pieces. I still work with Bill, my colleague at Mosaic, occasionally putting together, we do animations together. We make films. He's an artist and I've learnt the basics of film editing. So we make little animations for people if they ask us. I'm doing little bits and pieces working in the church, and I have now got quite a bit of spare time as well, which I'm really enjoying.
Well, that's good.
Half my family lives in Wales, so it's great to have the time to go and visit them. My grandson lives in Wales. Yes, that's where I am at the moment.
No doubt we will be talking about that plug you gave earlier on about your book.
Again, yeah.
Which is fine. But I tell you what I picked up on because of a couple of podcasts that we've already had in the past 2-3 months, actually. You were writing resources on subjects like mental health and modern slavery. And I also know that you've got a sister, I believe, who's a gynecologist.
Yes.
And she's got a big tie-up with Nepal.
Yes.
Which would lead on to a podcast that we're going to be doing very shortly about modern slavery. But tell me why it's so important to you, please.
Okay, so it started when Bill and I we'd written a resource for UK churches called Stories on the Street, which is the UK version of this process called church and community engagement, if you like. And we'd written this resource and we were putting on a workshop for anybody who wanted to come to have a look at this resource and see how they could use it in their churches. This was back in 2017, I think. And at that time, 2 people from the Clure Initiative who address modern slavery, they're part of the Church of England, and they address modern slavery in this country, came on that workshop and loved the way we do things, because Bill is an artist and I have this background in drama and I write dramas. And we combine those 2 things to make the training as memorable and as fun and accessible as possible. And they really liked the way we did that. So they asked us if we could work for them, if we could produce resources for them and training for them on modern slavery. Up until that moment, to be honest with you, Martin, I didn't know much about it at all. And it's through working with Bill and producing these resources that I found out about how horrific it is. We think slavery is a thing of the past. No, it isn't. It's not a thing of the past. It's everywhere. You know, whether it's labour exploitation or sexual exploitation, domestic servitude. And the thing that I actually spent most time training and raising awareness of is county lines, which is the exploitation of children in trafficking drugs, which is absolutely everywhere, all over this country. It's horrendous because it's our kids. You know, our kids they're having their lives stolen by it. You know, they're being manipulated into gangs. They're looking for a sense of belonging, and these gang leaders are falsely providing that and then manipulating them into selling drugs. And of course, they don't get paid for it because either they've been given something, these children have been given something that they later find out isn't a gift, you're going to have to earn it, or they've been given something that's been mugged off them by members of the gang. And again, they're told, oh, well, you've lost this money and now you're going to have to work for it. So it's awful. And a lot of the grooming is done online, which is why, you know, I was talking about mobile phones and social media and getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So it's an awful thing and it's everywhere.
99% of people would have heard the term modern slavery. Maybe a certain percentage of that would have heard of the county lines. But what feedback have you had since you did the animation and the resources available on behalf of the Clure Initiative regarding what you did?
I think people are genuinely surprised. We invite people to come on the training to hear about what's going on. Yeah, I think people are surprised at how much there is in this country of modern slavery and county lines. I think particularly county lines, it's distressing because it's children. I think it may be at one time there was an unwritten code that you don't involve children in crime, but that's gone now. That's gone. It's because children are so easy to manipulate. The reaction is, people are horrified and they want to do something about it. And that's the reason for raising awareness, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do, to educate people so that they do things in their local communities to raise awareness.
Yes.
And a lot of it's about tight-knit communities. And unfortunately in our country, it's true, isn't it, that we're quite an individualistic country. People don't really think that they need other people. But the answer to a lot of the issues in our country, whether it's modern slavery, county lines, whether it's loneliness, which is a never-ending pandemic, The answer is closer-knit communities. We need to be looking out for our neighbours. We need to know who's living to the right and left, and we need to, because the more we know what's going on, the less likely these crimes can thrive.
I mean, let's move on a bit then as well, if that's okay, to mental health issues, which seems to be a big thing at the moment with the podcast that we're doing with guests, especially the one that went out a couple of weeks ago with Zana Stewart, as we looked into HDAD and autism. So what's your reason for wanting to do resources on that subject?
I think the main thing that we got involved with was making films about it. We interviewed people who are suffering from mental health issues, and Bill illustrated their interviews that were shown, in churches. They were made available. On a personal note, my own children suffer. My eldest has mild autism.
Mm-hmm.
My grandson has autism, and my youngest son has autistic traits, and he has ADHD and various other things as well. And I was a single mother when my boys were growing up. My husband left when they were 8 and 10. So I was a single mother to these teenage boys who were trying to make their way through life with these mental health issues. And that was really tough. There was a lot of anger. Sometimes the house was a bit like a war zone. My youngest son in particular was quite an angry teenager. I'm so grateful for the church family at that time, actually, because by that time I'd gone away from the church when I was younger, and I came back to it. And at that stage, so I had a church family when I became a single parent, and I just don't know what I would have done without it, Martin. They were so supportive. So I do have this personal connection with mental health and what it could do to young children.
And I just want to probe a bit more.
Okay.
Because you never know, it might give us more of an understanding as to why you've written your latest book, Following the Sun. It's interesting that you said you came away from the church growing up. What can you remember that time as to why you were going to say, right, I'm not going to church anymore? What happened?
I was born into a Christian family. My dad was a lay reader, and going to church was what I did as a child. And I was a singer, sang in the choir, and I enjoyed all that. But obviously it didn't go very deep, because when I became a teenager, I discovered running, and of course joined an athletics club, and of course they train on a Sunday morning. And so I stopped really going to church to do the training, which I don't think my mum and dad were too happy about. And that kind of continued when I went to university. I went nowhere near a church. When I was at university, I didn't go to Christian Union or anything like that. Then I left uni, and I had a lot of fun, obviously, running and singing and getting involved with the drama people at uni and doing theatre and stuff like that, which was great. But I lived without any kind of reference to God, really, and made some pretty bad decisions as well. And one of those was to get married for all the wrong reasons, really. I think I was 26 and I thought I just ought to be married by then. I think at that time it was the average age to get married, which of course it's not anymore. I think people get married in their 30s now. I'd had plenty of evidence, really, that there wasn't enough love in this relationship. And sure enough, the marriage was in trouble, really, from the word go. We had our difficulties. But it was at this time, when I was going through these difficulties, that a Christian family moved into my road. And that made all the difference, because we became friends, because we were the same age, our children were the same age. We became very good friends. They'd been missionaries in the Congo.
Oh, really?
And they found a church, and I used to go running with Karen, and this was Bill and Karen Crooks and their family. So I was later to start working with him. But at this time, I would go walking and running with Karen, and she would talk about her faith and talk about the church and things like that. And I was curious, because, it had been part of my history. But I think at that time, if there was a God, I felt he was quite a cold, irrelevant God, because my dad had died just before I met the Crooks family. He was only 63. He'd given his life to God, and he'd not had the chance to retire with my mum because he'd gone into the ministry. My sister, she was in Pakistan at that stage and having a rough time, and I thought, she's giving her life to God as well. And I was thinking, this is, these people are giving their lives to God. I just thought, what's the point? So I thought of him as sort of cold and distant and, indifferent, I guess. That was my image of him. But then one weekend, Karen Crooks came over to me and she said, I really want to go to church tomorrow. There's a guest speaker and Bill is in London with the car. Can you give me a lift, please?
Oh, that old classic.
The classic, can you give me a lift? There were two things I was going to do the next day, Sunday. I remember that. But I loved Karen and I thought, okay, I'll take you to church. And I walked in and the guest speaker was a guy called Alan Husky. He had cerebral palsy. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. He couldn't move his arms. Even speech was difficult for him. But, oh my goodness, he started to speak. And I was mesmerized, really, because he was in love with Jesus. Mm. It just flowed out of him. And he talked about his relationship with God. And I remember thinking as he was talking about his God and his relationship, I remember thinking, that's the God I want to get to know. I want to get to know your God. As I was leaving the church, I had this image in my head of Jesus banging on the door, like desperate. Not a cold, indifferent God, but somebody desperate to be part of my life and to turn things around, because I was in a very bad place at that particular time. And everything changed from then. I became part of that church. I loved being part of that church because the leader of the church at that time was a wonderful man called David Rowe, and he and his wife loved drama and they loved music, and the services were full of it. I became part of that, so I started to sing and to act and start writing, I guess, at that stage as well. So that was a really great time.
Yeah.
Yes, and as I said, unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. I thought God might be able to turn things around for us, but that didn't happen. My husband left. He left for somebody else. So that's when the single parenthood started.
Gotcha.
and all those difficulties. As I said, by that time I was in a church family and their support was just brilliant and wonderful. So many wonderful men, including Bill, who were mentors for my kids and, in the absence of their father, really.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful.
Thank you for your openness on it.
Yeah.
If we had your two sons in the room with you now, bearing in mind that you've explained very eloquently what you had to go through, if they were in the room with you now and we said, look, what do you remember of that time when your mum said she was going to go back to church? What would they say, do you think?
Oh, they wouldn't have had good memories of that time, Martin. It was a horrible time, especially for my youngest, I think. He had his thumb firmly on the self-destruct button. I mean, he was excluded from school, got in trouble with the police. Later on, he, experimented with drugs. Yeah, my youngest was very angry with both of us. So my eldest spent most of his life in the loft, really trying to stay out of the war zone. And it got to the stage, I'm afraid, where it became unsafe for him to be in home, and he went to live with his dad for a while. So what would they say? Neither of them liked school. If you've got any kind of autism, school is difficult. And I think school is not the right thing for a lot of boys as well. I think they're trying to change it, aren't they, and make things a bit more practical. But school was tough for both of them. Neither of them worked. They came out of school with sort of 3 GCSEs between them, I think. But having said that, I am so proud of them, because both of them have never been out of work and they've really got on with their lives and they're both doing really well, this sort of work-wise. And what would they say? I don't think they want to really look back on that time. It wasn't a good time for either of them or me.
Well, this is it.
At the time, I remember praying. I used to go to the Bible studies. Wonderful women would pray with me and prayed for my boys and what was going on with them. And there didn't seem to be any kind of answers from God at that time, because it was many years these troubles sort of went on. I did get to a stage during that time thinking of almost losing my faith. I didn't. We were praying and nothing was happening. But looking back on it, that period of my life has given me such a heart for the social, emotional poverty in this country. And it really helped when I did finally get a job with Bill that was meaningful, and we started working with communities and seeing families suffering from, absent fathers and mothers turning to the bottle, really, and kids growing up in gangs. I remember going around Liverpool looking at churches who were using the training that we'd produced and hearing about what was going on. We were going back in the car after visiting these projects, and I was aware that I was in pain, and I was aware that it wasn't just my pain. I was connecting with God's pain for the poverty in this country, and it really gave me energy for the work that Bill and I were doing, and I felt God's call, and I think that was due to what I'd been through with single parenthood. And then shortly after that visit, I became part of a volunteer team that visited a hostel for homeless young people in our town, and we did that for 10 years, and that's been one of the richest experiences of my life too. So although at the time, Martin, I didn't feel that God was answering my prayers, I can see what he's done with that time with me. I can see what he's done with it and given me energy for the work that I've been doing.
And I'm sure there are people who can identify what you shared, can identify with the fact that the home was like a war zone. For their encouragement, obviously they can hear that there's a good success story in the making in Jackie, but where are your two sons these days as far as their faith is concerned, if they've got one?
When I was talking to you about 2012, that year, my youngest son, who went through all that pain in his teens, this was really incredible, really, because just like I was rescued by my neighbours in a way, so was he. Because the people who moved next door to me were also Christians, but they went to another church. And my sons of it were not going to church with me at that time. But these neighbours befriended my youngest son, and they took him to their church, and he had an encounter with God there. As I said, he was baptised in that year, 2012. He still has his issues with anger and mental health, and he struggles, he is struggling with his faith, I think, at the moment, but it's there.
Yeah.
I know that God's got him. It's there.
Yeah.
My eldest son, no, he does not have a faith at the moment. He lives in Wales with his wonderful girlfriend. But I don't worry, because I can see God at work in both of them. My daughter-in-law, they're not married, but I call her my daughter-in-law. She also has, she has Christian parents. She's had a bad experience with church too. And she's kind of quite anti. But she has been the best thing for my son. I can't tell you. She is the most wonderful woman. And she has loved my son with his, autism. And his life. She has opened up his world. I never thought my son would have a girlfriend, and now he's got the most wonderful woman, and he's a father, and he's a wonderful father as well. So I don't worry about them, Martin. I can see God at work.
Yeah, because there's going to be a time, isn't there? Both of them will realise that actually they're not really blaming God.
No.
They're blaming the situation, and they want to find out, like you did on your journey, who God actually is. And who knows, it could be when you go to see your grandson in a few hours' time. And just in case any burglars are listening, this was recorded miles before it went out, so you can't call round and get that Christmas tree.
No.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your honesty. And I'm sure, as I said, the people who are identifying with that. And of course, let's talk about you yourself now and what you're doing currently. And that you've written books, and the latest book is called Following the Sun.
Yes.
The Sun is spelled S-O-N.
Yes, well done.
I wonder what that's going to be about.
Ooh.
The fact I also said that you love monologues, and you've got Lynn Green of the Baptist Church Association.
She's the General Secretary of the Baptist Union. So that's kind of the equivalent of the Archbishop of Canterbury, isn't it? She is the head honcho of the Baptist Union. She's fabulous.
Well, the fact she says she likes your monologues, that's pretty good.
She does.
So first of all then, yes. What is a monologue, for those who don't know, and why do you like writing monologues, and about the book itself?
It's a drama script, but it's for one person. I love monologues because it allows you to get under the skin of a particular character and really explore them and explore their feelings and bring those out. And in particular, the gospel stories is such a gift for a scriptwriter and writing monologues in particular, because The gospel stories are written in scripture as a sequence of events. On every page, there are stories of transformation as you read about Jesus' ministry. There are people being transformed on every page. But if you read the scripture, you won't get many words of emotion or feelings or anything like that. So it's a beautiful opportunity to bring those out through drama. And I started writing monologues when Bill and I were working with churches and aid agencies in this country and overseas. And we worked, as I said, in this process of envisioning churches to have a passion for their communities and then equipping them with practical tools to help them work alongside their communities to make things better, especially for the most vulnerable and marginalized. That's what it was all about. And now that envisioning part of the process, that's when we really used the creativity, the art and the drama. So we would take passages that clearly shows Jesus's priority for the poor, etc., and we would be creative with them. So Bill would use art, and this is when I started to write monologues. So I started with the woman who touched the cloak of Jesus, and then went on to the woman at the well and Bartimaeus, others like that. And I would perform these monologues for these churches. It was just so thrilling and encouraging to see how people were able to identify and empathize with the characters and have so many fresh insights to these very familiar stories and see things in a new way. Basically, it was taking the text from the head to the heart, where a lot of individual transformation happens, isn't it? And I found that just by writing these monologues, I was getting closer to God as well, because I could see how his reaction to each person that he met was so perfect for that person. Yeah, and that is available. That personal touch is available to all of us. So I wanted to write more and more of these monologues. And at some stage, I thought it would be really great to write the whole story in this format. And so that's what Following the Sun became. So I took monologues that I'd already written for our training, and then I added more monologues to tell the whole story of Jesus's ministry. And then I thought I need a way of linking it all together. So I chose Simon Peter.
Yeah.
I chose Simon Peter to be the disciple who was going to sort of link each monologue to the next one, really. So it starts with the miraculous catch of fish, where Peter is called, and it ends with that breakfast on the beach where Peter is restored. And then there's all the other action in between. So you hear so many voices, you hear from people who knew him well, like Mary, his mother, and Mary Magdalene, and some of the disciples. And then you hear from people who only met him once, but their lives were completely transformed, like woman at the well, and the little boy who gave his lunch to Jesus, and Bartimaeus, and Jairus, and the woman who touched clothes. It's all in there. I self-published it to start with, but I also sent it to a couple of Christian publishers, one of whom was Instant Apostle, who said, yeah, we would love to publish this. But could you turn it into a devotional? Which is what I did. So then I added the relevant scripture, and I added questions, and I added prayers. So each monologue has questions and prayers. So it's been made into a proper devotional as well.
Got you. If I had the book in front of me and I was doing it, am I actually reading it as if I was Peter and it's the words?
You're reading his story, yes. And then you're reading the story of the woman who touched clothes. Then Mary's telling you about the wedding of Cana. And then one of the friends who let their friend through the roof.
Yes.
The story of the healing of the paralytic. I've written that from the point of view of one of the friends. So you hear from him.
Oh, got you.
If you're using it as a devotional, then you should always read the scripture first. Read the scripture first, and then read the monologue from the point of view of whoever it is. And then you come to the questions. And you can have such rich discussions. That's what we found. Certainly when I was performing the monologues for churches, the discussions that came out of it was so rich. In the audio version, I play Mary, Jesus' mother.
What I would find fascinating, I don't know if you ever watched the TV series The Chosen, but...
Oh, that for me is the best thing on the life of Christ I've ever seen. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Oh, it's just beautifully crafted, isn't it? Bringing all those disciples to life, it is just beautiful. I love it.
They must have spent some time, obviously, with the historical books as well as the Bible in front of them, trying to work out backstories, which I think is fantastic.
Yes.
You talk about, I think it's in episode 1, isn't it, where he cast a net over the boat so they could bring an extra fish. And that whole story lasts like 45 minutes. It's absolutely brilliant. So when you were doing your monologues, how were you able to sort of come up with some decent backstories just to embellish what you're trying to say?
I'd read round the story. So you read the bit that comes before and the bit afterwards. I didn't really go deeply into backstories. I think it's really about what they're feeling in the moment, I think. Although occasionally I'll add a character, like for instance, with the woman that touched the cloak. I've given her a neighbour called Martha, who comes in and tells her that Jairus' daughter has been risen to life. That's how it all starts. So those two stories are running side by side, the woman touching the cloak and Jairus' daughter. So occasionally I'll kind of add in an extra character to fill out the story a bit. But really the monologues are what is happening for this person in that moment. The Chosen's different because it's the whole journey of all the disciples, and we find out so much about each of them. And I love the way, for instance, you talk about the miraculous catch of fish, but they've got Matthew, who at that stage is the tax collector.
And is slightly on the spectrum, I think it's safe to say.
He is. He's got autism. He has been employed by the Romans to spy on Peter, who hasn't been paying his taxes. So he is spying on Peter and witnesses the miraculous catch of fish, which obviously has a massive impression on him, which leads, of course, to when Jesus calls Matthew. And that's just brilliantly done, I think. I love what they've done with Matthew. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a compelling watch.
Yeah.
I'd like to know then, if that's okay, and thank you for sharing and positioning in such an eloquent way. Having written the monologue, which came out of your book, which is now a daily devotional, what have you got out of it yourself, and what have you learned about God that you hadn't learnt beforehand?
As I said, I think it has been a real spiritual exercise for me, because just by writing them, it brings you closer to him, to Jesus. And by entering into the feelings of these people who met him, it makes you, you get to see so many things in the stories that you wouldn't see normally, which I loved. If you just take the story of the woman touching cloak and Jairus, there are so many connections between these two, including obviously the 12 years. She's been bleeding for 12 years. He's got a 12-year-old daughter. But one moment in that story that I absolutely love is when the woman, he stops, who touched me? But when the woman touches his cloak, and he doesn't need to stop. She's been healed. She's reached out in faith and touched his cloak. But he stops because he wants to connect with her. He wants to put her at the centre of this crowd, I think, and give her time and space to tell her story, which she has the time and space to do. And then he says to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. But of course, at the same time, there's Jairus, desperate for him to get to his house because his daughter's dying. So I remember thinking, what on earth could have been going through Jairus' mind at that time when he stops to hear this woman's story? And sure enough, just as Jesus is saying to her, daughter, your faith has healed you, go in peace. Just at that point, the servant comes from Jairus' house and says, your daughter is dead. I mean, how devastating is that? But he has just seen and heard Jesus say to this woman, your faith has healed you. And Jesus turns round to Jairus when Jairus hears the news about his daughter dying. And Jesus turns round to him and says, have faith, just believe. And sure enough, they go to the house and Jesus says, she's not dead, she's just sleeping. And little girl, get up. And it's so beautiful because Jairus has seen 2 miracles that day. And you've got to wonder, he's a rabbi as well, you've got to wonder what his sort of preaching would be like after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a beautiful story. And I think just by going into it, and in fact, in the book, I've written that story as a duologue. So it's the woman touching the cloak and Jairus. So there's 4 duologues in the book. And the duologues aren't conversations between 2 people. It's 2 people's perspective of the same event. So they alternate their speech. So the woman and the Jairus tell that story from their perspectives. So I'm not sure if I'm even answering your question. What do I get? It brings me closer to God. It helps me see things in a different way and see how special Jesus' love is for everybody and how it's perfect for that person. I think I've said that before, but yeah, I've got a huge amount out of writing this. Yeah. And that is my hope for people reading or listening, that will bring them closer to God.
Very quickly, because we're rapidly running out of time, really, and we've got to find out who your Christian hero is at the very end. We heard a helicopter flying in the background when you were talking. If I could put you in my time machine and take you back to your former self, when you were going through everything, life was a war zone. But because I'm taking you back in my time machine, you've only got like 30 seconds to say to your former self, what would you say?
Just that God will use it. And that's what I love about God, I think. Nothing is wasted with God. The good stuff and the bad stuff. He will turn the bad stuff around and use it for his glory. I think that's what I'd say. I'd say this is tough. This is really tough, but God will use it.
And you've survived.
You'll be okay. I've survived. Yeah, survived. Yeah.
Don't mention the fact maybe you should mention the fact, don't drink too much wine in a prayer meeting because you might faint.
Yes, I think I've learnt that, Martin, to be fair. It's not happened since, so maybe I can be taught. Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for what you've shared. And I'd like you, at the very end, if that's right, for people that have been challenged and felt encouraged by what you've shared, that there is an answer.
Yeah.
And it's not just to buy your book either.
No.
That does help.
But that would be lovely. Yeah.
If people would like to contact you, at the very end, please give your website address out, please, and how they can contact you accordingly. That'd be great. It just remains for me to say, Jackie Mouradian, who is your Christian hero, please?
I have chosen as my Christian hero the Catholic priest, Henri Nouwen.
Tell me more.
So he's a Dutch Catholic priest, Henri Nouwen, and he's written quite a few books.
Is he still alive?
No, he died in 1996, but yeah, he was a Catholic priest. He was one of the most influential spiritual writers of the 20th century. He's written quite a lot of books.
Wow.
What I love about is the honesty of his books. And yeah, he wrote about his inner life with honesty and vulnerability and compassion. And he never pretended to have it all together. He struggled with a lot of things, insecurity, with his sexuality, actually, and loneliness, I think, and longing for affirmation.
Yeah.
But he realized that it's in these fragile places that's where God meets us. And my favorite books of his is The Return of the Prodigal Son, which is based on the Rembrandt painting of the Return of the Prodigal Son. But it talks about all those themes of God's unconditional love and forgiveness and homecoming and grace. And it's a beautiful book. And also The Wounded Healer, which really resonates with me because it talks about that personal suffering and vulnerability can be used as sources of compassion and healing for others. And it's about using those tough times that we talked about today, and using them in a positive way to bring healing to others. So I really admire him. And also he was such a humble man as well. He was a great theologian. He taught at places like Harvard and Yale.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he chose to spend the last part of his life at a place called L'Arche Daybreak, which is a community for people with intellectual disabilities. So the last 10 years of his life, he spent there just being with those people who are profoundly disabled. And he discovered that spiritual maturity isn't measured by achievement or intellect, but by our capacity to be present, to listen, and to love. Yeah, I love the way he writes. I love his humility. And if I can, he has some amazing quotes, beautiful quotes. And my favourite, which is attributed to Henri Nouwen, really sums up Jesus and what it's all about and what, we should be doing. So can I just quote?
Go ahead.
This is my favourite quote. It just says, "I keep marvelling at the radicality as well as the simplicity of Jesus' message. He breaks right through all the questions about what to do in order not to offend God and places the poor in front of us, saying, 'This is me, love me.' How radical and how simple." I love that. I just love that.
And his name again, please?
Henri Nouwen.
Well, you'd be pleased to know you're the first person, I think, in my 30-odd years of doing this, of choosing him. So fantastic. And I must look out for him as well.
Yeah, look out for his books. They're really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jackie, thank you. I did say you could have a plug at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
So for those who have been challenged, encouraged, please, we don't want any sort of letters or emails coming to you. So, Jackie, how can they get hold of you, please?
Okay, well, my website is JackieMouradianWrites.com.
I'll put it on the blurb.
So JackieMouradianWrites.com, and you can get the book and the audio version there, Following the Sun. You can also, of course, buy the Following the Sun on Amazon or Eden Books. It's available.
Wonderful. What's going to happen to you in the future? We'll find out in a few years' time. I'm sure we can come back to you and say, "Oi, how's that Christmas tree doing? And what can we learn from you this time?"
Brilliant. I would love that.
Well, there you are.
I've really enjoyed it, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jackie. Cheers. God bless.
Cheers. Bye.
And if you haven't hit the like and subscribe button, please do. Next time on Off-Grid Christianity.
In 2010, I was a few years into being a vicar in St. Simon's, and there was a group of men that got together in a pub from the church and said, "What can we do for local boys?" We initially thought of having a rugby club for them that would meet locally, and actually there was even talk about training them on Shepherd's Bush Green or getting them in a minibus out to somewhere that was a proper sports field.
Brilliant.
And it just wasn't going anywhere. Within the same conversation in the pub, we concluded at the end what we would do is have a go at setting up a boxing club for them in the church premises, and it would include a boxing ring that the church would need to fund. The aim was to get young lads off their Xboxes and into the boxing ring in church, give them discipline, exercise, some self-esteem, and change their lives as best we could. That was the reason why the boxing club came about. And I remember that the Church of England came and did a documentary on St. Simon's Church Boxing Club a few years later. And the boxing club, 16 years on from all of it, is still going strong today.
Wow. So please join me with our special guest, Cameron Collington, and what a podcast it is. Until then, cheerio.